When the grandmother started to speak, Dr. Phil stopped the tape. The studio went completely silent. No one moved. Not the cameras. Not the audience. Not even the producers standing behind the monitors in the control room. For the first time in over 2 decades of television, Dr. Phil McGraw, the man who had seen every kind of human crisis, every form of confession, every shade of truth and deception, stood frozen. His hand was still raised, signaling the crew to halt. His eyes were locked on the elderly woman sitting across from him, trembling in the brown leather chair that had held thousands of guests before her. But this moment was different. Because what she was about to say would not only shock everyone in that room. It would unravel 30 years of silence, lies, and a family torn apart by a secret so devastating that even Dr. Phil wasn't prepared for it. Her name was Margaret. 78 years old. A grandmother of 5. To the outside world, she was the picture of grace, kind eyes, soft voice, the type of woman who baked cookies for church fundraisers and knitted blankets for her grandchildren. But behind that gentle exterior was a woman carrying a weight so heavy that it had bent her spirit for 3 decades. And tonight, on this stage, in front of millions, she was finally ready to let it go. The journey to this moment had begun 6 weeks earlier. Margaret's daughter, Linda, had written a desperate letter to the Dr. Phil show. The subject line read, "My mother is dying, and she won't tell us the truth." Linda explained that her family had been fractured for 30 years by an event no one talked about, a night in 1994 when Margaret's husband, Linda's father, had died under circumstances that were never fully explained. The official cause of death was listed as a heart attack. But Linda had always felt something was wrong. The timing. The silence. The way her mother had shut down emotionally ever since. Now, decades later, Margaret had been diagnosed with late-stage cancer. The doctors gave her less than a year. And Linda believed that if her mother didn't speak now, the truth would die with her. Dr. Phil's team reached out. After weeks of conversations, Margaret agreed to come on the show. Not because she wanted fame. Not because she sought forgiveness. But because, as she later told a producer off-camera, "I can't meet my maker with this still locked inside me." The atmosphere in the studio that day was different from the start. Even before the taping began, you could feel it. The audience had been briefed to remain respectful. No applause. No gasps. This wasn't entertainment. This was a family in pain, and Dr. Phil made it clear to everyone. "We're here to help, not to judge." Margaret walked onto the stage slowly, assisted by her daughter Linda and her 2 granddaughters, both in their 20s. They sat together on one side of the stage while Margaret took the center chair, directly across from Dr. Phil. She wore a simple floral dress and a silver cross necklace. Her hands shook as she clasped them together in her lap. Dr. Phil opened gently. "Margaret, thank you for being here. I know this isn't easy." She nodded. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Thank you for having me. Your daughter Linda wrote to us because she believes there's something you need to say. Something about the night your husband passed away." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. She looked down at her hands. Dr. Phil leaned forward. "Margaret, I want you to know that whatever you need to say, this is a safe place. No one here is going to judge you. We're here to listen. And if you need to stop at any point, we stop. Okay?" She nodded again. And then, with a voice that cracked under the weight of decades of silence, she began. "It wasn't a heart attack." The words hung in the air like smoke. Linda gasped. One of the granddaughters covered her mouth. The audience sat frozen. Dr. Phil didn't move. He just held her gaze. "What happened, Margaret?" She took a deep, shuddering breath. He was hurting me. For years. And that night I couldn't take it anymore." Subscribe and leave a comment. Because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Margaret's confession had cracked open a door that had been sealed for 30 years, and now the truth was pouring out. "He hit me," she continued, her voice stronger now, as if speaking the words aloud was releasing something inside her. He hid me for 23 years. He controlled everything. Where I went. Who I talked to. What I wore. If I stepped out of line, even a little, he'd punish me. Linda was crying now, her hands over her face. The granddaughters looked at each other in shock. They had never known. No one had. Dr. Phil's expression was one of deep empathy, but also laser focus. And that night, what happened that night? Margaret closed her eyes. He came home drunk. Angrier than usual. He'd been at the bar, and someone had said something to him that set him off. When he walked in, he started yelling. Accusing me of things I didn't do. I tried to stay calm. I tried to just get through it like I always did. But then he grabbed me. He pushed me against the wall. And I saw it in his eyes, this time, he wasn't going to stop. She paused, her hands trembling. I ran to the kitchen. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just needed to get away from him. But he followed me. He grabbed my arm so hard I thought it would break. And then, I saw the knife on the counter. Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. He raised his hand to the crew. Stop the tape. The cameras stopped rolling. The red recording lights blinked off. The producers in the control room exchanged confused glances. This wasn't planned. This wasn't scripted. Dr. Phil stood up and walked over to Margaret. He knelt down beside her chair, his voice low and gentle, speaking only to her. Margaret, I need you to listen to me very carefully. What you're about to say. This could have legal implications. I want to make sure you understand that. I can stop this right now. We can turn off the cameras, and you and I can talk privately. You don't have to do this publicly. Margaret looked at him, tears streaming down her face. I've been silent for 30 years, Dr. Phil. I need to say it. I need my family to know. I need the world to know what happened. Not because I want sympathy, but because I can't die with this lie. Dr. Phil studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay. But we're going to do this the right way. I'm going to have my team bring in a legal advisor and a trauma counselor. They're going to be here with us. And if at any point you want to stop, we stop. Do you understand? I understand. Dr. Phil stood up and turned to his producers. Bring in Dr. Sanders and our legal team. Now. Within minutes, the stage was set differently. A licensed therapist sat just off camera, ready to intervene if needed. A legal consultant stood nearby, ensuring that Margaret's rights were protected. The audience had been asked if they wanted to leave, but not a single person moved. They understood the gravity of what they were witnessing. Dr. Phil returned to his seat. The cameras started rolling again. Margaret, he said softly, when you're ready. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I picked up the knife. I didn't plan it. I wasn't thinking. I held it up and told him to stop. To leave me alone. But he didn't stop. He laughed. He said I didn't have the guts. And then he lunged at me. Her voice broke, but she kept going. I don't even remember doing it. I just remember him stepping back. And there was blood. So much blood. He looked at me, surprised. Like he couldn't believe I'd actually fought back. And then he collapsed. Linda let out a sob. The granddaughters were holding each other, tears streaming down their faces. I called 911. Margaret continued. I told them he was having a heart attack. And when they came, they believed me. The paramedics, the doctors, everyone. They said it was cardiac arrest. And I let them believe it. Because I was terrified. I thought they'd take me away. I thought I'd lose everything. So I buried it. I buried him. And I buried the truth. Dr. Phil leaned back in his chair, processing what he'd just heard. Margaret, did you ever try to leave him before that night? I tried once. Years earlier. But he found me. He brought me back. And he made sure I never tried again. Did anyone know what was happening? Family? Friends? She shook her head. He was good at hiding it. In public, he was charming. Everyone loved him. They thought we had the perfect marriage. But behind closed doors, it was a nightmare. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He stood up again and walked over to Linda and the granddaughters. He spoke to them directly, his voice firm but compassionate. I know this is hard to hear. I know it's shocking. But I need you to understand something. Your mother, your grandmother, she is not a monster. She was a victim. For over 2 decades, she endured abuse that no human being should ever have to endure. And on that night, she did what she felt she had to do to survive. Linda looked up at him, her face streaked with tears. I had no idea. I never knew. I know you didn't. And that's not your fault. But now you do know. And now you have a choice. You can hold on to anger, or you can hold on to your mother while you still have her. One of the granddaughters spoke up, her voice shaking. Grandma, why didn't you tell us? Margaret looked at her, heartbroken. Because I was ashamed. I thought you'd hate me. I thought you'd think I was a murderer. Dr. Phil interjected. Margaret, what you described is not murder. It's self-defense. And the fact that you've carried this guilt for 30 years, that you've let it eat away at you, that's the real tragedy here. He turned to the audience. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you felt trapped? Where you felt like there was no way out? Several hands went up. This is what abuse does. It traps people. It makes them feel like they have no options. And sometimes, in a moment of desperation, people do things they never thought they were capable of. That doesn't make them evil. It makes them human. He looked back at Margaret. You've been punishing yourself for 30 years. Don't you think that's enough? She nodded, unable to speak. Dr. Phil reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope. He held it up for everyone to see. Margaret, before you came here today, I had my team do some research. We spoke to legal experts. We reviewed the timeline of events. And I want you to know something. He opened the envelope and pulled out a document. The statute of limitations for what happened that night has long since passed. Legally, you are not in jeopardy. But more importantly, I spoke to a judge who specializes in domestic violence cases. She reviewed your story, and she said, and I quote, "This woman was defending her life. She should have never had to carry this burden alone." Margaret broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. Linda rushed over and wrapped her arms around her mother. The granddaughters joined them, and for the first time in 30 years, the family held each other without the weight of a lie between them. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Dr. Phil walked over to his desk and picked up a phone. He dialed a number on speakerphone. Hello, this is Dr. Phil McGraw. I'm here with a woman who needs help. She's been living with trauma and guilt for 30 years, and I want to make sure she gets the support she deserves before it's too late. The voice on the other end was calm and professional. Dr. McGraw, this is Director Patricia Lawson from the National Domestic Violence Hotline. We've been standing by. What does she need? She needs therapy. She needs legal clarity. And she needs to know that she's not alone. We're already coordinating with a trauma center near her home. We'll have a team ready to work with her starting tomorrow. And we'll cover all costs. No one should have to face this alone. Margaret looked up, stunned. You did this for me? Dr. Phil knelt down beside her again. Margaret, you came here and told the truth. The least I can do is make sure you don't walk out of here without help. The audience erupted in applause. Not performative. Not scripted. But genuine, heartfelt applause for a woman who had found the courage to finally speak. Dr. Phil stood and addressed the camera directly. If you're watching this and you're in an abusive situation, whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not alone. You are not weak. And you have options. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Reach out to someone you trust. But do not stay silent. Because silence protects the abuser, not the victim. He turned back to Margaret. You've been carrying this for 30 years. It's time to put it down. She nodded, tears still streaming, but for the first time in decades, there was something else in her eyes. Relief. The taping wrapped shortly after. But the story didn't end there. Over the next few months, Margaret worked with a team of therapists specializing in trauma and PTSD. She attended support groups for survivors of domestic violence. And she reconnected with her family in a way she never thought possible. Linda later said in a follow-up interview, "I finally understand my mother. I finally see her not as the woman who kept a secret, but as the woman who survived." One of the granddaughters started a foundation in Margaret's name to help elderly women escape abusive relationships. She said, "My grandma's story taught me that it's never too late to tell the truth. And it's never too late to heal." As for Margaret, she lived another 14 months after that taping. She passed away peacefully, surrounded by her family. And on her bedside table, there was a small card that Dr. Phil had given her after the show. It read, "You are stronger than you know. You are braver than you think. And you are loved." Dr. Phil kept a photo from that day in his office. Not because it was dramatic television, but because it reminded him why he does what he does. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Some secrets are too heavy to carry alone. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is finally put them down.